इवनिंग। मैंने कहा याद दिला दो, तुम तो भूल गए हैं। मैं बिजी रहता हूँ। अच्छा, एक चीजें बियरिंग है, ये इसमें बहुत सारी है।
ओके ओके। हाँ हाँ, ओके।
मैं इनको एंटर करवा लूं? 20 पीपल आते हैं।
हाँ हाँ, करवा दीजिए।
हाँ, क्योंकि और भी वेट फॉर फ्यू मिनट्स, क्योंकि ऑलरेडी 1 मिनट ऊपर है।
हमारा कोई वीडियो नहीं है क्या सीईआई का?
नहीं, अभी तो नहीं है।
अच्छा। आप मेरे ख्याल से एंटर करा दीजिए, 3 बज गए हैं, 4 बज गए हैं। ठीक है, वो अदरवाइज दे विल फील दैट वी हैव फॉरगॉटन।
पता चलेगा। अगर हमने एक बार आपको डीपीआर कराया, हमने डीपीआर देखी, उसके बाद कोई भी केस कराएंगे हमने डिस्कस कर दिया। हिंदुस्तान का ये धंधा नहीं है, यहाँ पे एम्प्लॉयर एम्प्लॉय मालिक है, वो जो हमने कह दिया करो। प्रोफेशनल तरीका तो है नहीं यहाँ पर इक्वल हो। जितना आपने काम किया तो
वसीम, म्यूट कर लीजिए। आई थिंक देयर इज अ क्रॉस टॉक गोइंग ऑन
Yeah.
फ्रॉम योर।
No problem, sir. Shall we start, sir? I think.
यस यस, आई थिंक वी कैन स्टार्ट।
Okay. I'm just sharing my screen. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome you all for the today's webinar on post-disaster rehabilitation and rebuilding, need of integrated management principles. I am Asim Rastogi, welcoming you all in behalf of CAI and Future Leader Forum for this webinar, which shall be presented by Ms. Ranjita Nair. So before starting a webinar, let me let you know about something about Future Leader Forum and what we do. So Future Leader Forum within CAI has formed in 2012 with the intention to provide young professionals with an opportunity to participate in CAI and in FEDIC also, and interact with their peers to develop the next generation future leader. The main objective of this forum is to provide a voice for young professionals, increase number of participants within CAI, strengthen the culture of dialogue, organize technical lectures in science, engineering and architecture and various other related engineering fields, publicize best practice and standards, share support stories about young professionals, and provide a supportive space for young professionals to discuss and communicate, and also to enhance consultancy in engineering professionals. Before I start, I would like to welcome Mr. Alok Bhomik sir, who is Vice President of CAI, for giving his opening remarks. Mr. Alok sir has more than 40 years of a design consultancy experience in transportation infrastructure. He has a postgraduate degree in structural engineering from IIT Delhi. Besides this, he is a member of many civil societies like Architect International Professional Engineering from Institute of Engineers and a fellow of Indian National Academy of Engineers. He has received several awards and citations in his professional career. He is a recipient of 24th S.B. Joshi Memorial Award for Excellence in Bridge and Structural Engineering. Sir, I would like to welcome you for your welcome note.
Thank you. Thank you, Asim. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this webinar. Very happy to see the Future Leader Forum, young people taking leadership position. Very, very heartening. This particular webinar is focused on a very, very important and relevant topic of concerns for all of us. As we all know, the entire world is passing through an existential threat, that what we call as climate crisis. And what is the impact of this climate crisis? The frequency of natural disasters is not only increasing, but also it is becoming more and more devastating. We are witnessing at many places rise in temperature, fall in agriculture productivity, flooding of our low-lying areas, change in monsoon pattern, change in the distribution of rainfall, and all of which is posing a lot of difficulty and financial burden. We have seen recently this Myanmar earthquake disaster. Every day we are reading in the newspaper. Memories are fresh. Thousands of people might have died and many more thousands are still missing. And besides, the social and economic impact of the disaster is pretty huge. So we are, in light of this background, we are very, very delighted to have a webinar on the very important topic, which is post-disaster rehabilitation and rebuilding, the need of integrated management principle. We are delighted to welcome Ms. Ranjita Nair, who is a contract specialist with Mrs. General Contracting and Trading Services, who will share her experience and wisdom with the participants. Over to you, Asim, and I welcome her once again.
Okay.
And over to you.
Okay,
The
sir.
virtual
Thank you,
podium
sir.
is yours.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir, for your remarks. And before I'd like to introduce Ms. Ranjita Nair. She has an impressive academic record of having the Masters in International Construction, Practice and Law from the prestigious University of Stuttgart, Germany. This young professional member has also secured Mix member of Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyor UK, and she recognized as the qualified APC assessor, primary reviewer and a counselor by RICS UK. She is a contract management professional specialized in claim variations, delays analysis, and quantum analysis of construction contracts. She is also a member of Association of Project Management UK, graduate member of Institution of Civil Engineers UK, and a member of Institution of Engineers India. She is currently working as a contract specialist in general contracting and trading service company WIL Bahrain. Before handovering to you, Ranjita, I'll ask our participants after the presentation. You can ask your question and ask in the chat box in your Zoom link. Okay, Ranjita, the floor is yours, and you can start your presentation.
Thank you, Asim. Mr. Robert Swan once said, "The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it." Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I am discussing about the necessity of post-disaster rehabilitation and rebuilding, and something very important about the disaster management. I will particularly focusing on the role of engineering fraternity into the disaster management field. So as engineers, we are obliged to contribute for the development and research that will help the communities. Earlier, there was only military engineering that they were doing all the works. Later part of our system, they have developed a non-military engineering fraternity. So, and they called broadly as a civil engineering. So now we know there are a lot of streams in that non-military engineering fraternity, like civil, electrical, mechanical, IT, etc. But still, when it comes to a disaster scenario, we are still relying on military engineering. And we cannot see a lot of involvement of non-military engineering. Either the engineering fraternity is not allowed to participate into it, or we are not participating adequately into it. The second thing is the involvement of young generation is completely nil in the field. So how much we are making aware of the necessity to participate in disaster management, how much our curriculum covers the necessity of each individual. So let's talk about it. So today I am going to take a presentation in two parts. The first part, I will cover a little glance about the disaster management, and the second part will be the Q&A session. So please note that your questions will be always brilliant, but the answers may not be that much conclusive. So let's go into our first slide. So I will be discussing a little few things about the definition and process flow and prevalence strategies. Later, I will touch upon Indian scenario, some of the common challenges that we are facing, then later reconstruction. So moving on to our first topic, disaster. So the definition of disaster. So there are many definitions for disaster. However, I will use only the disaster defined by the United Nations, which states that disaster is any event that is either man-made or naturally occurs, and that will seriously disrupt the community at any scale. So like any other project management, disaster also to be managed. So how the UN is developed the disaster management is like they have made it into phases. Like any other project management, disaster also has a pre-occurrence and post-occurrence phase. So pre-occurrence phase, the prevention and preparedness will come. That is the time they will be issuing warning, relocation, everything will happen. So once the disaster occurs, then mitigation and recovery phase will come. That is where recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction will be happening. So there are disaster is a catastrophic event. That is why UN has developed a lot of policies how to address, how to reduce the natural disaster risk reduction. So everything they have done a lot of research and developed certain frameworks and policies. So that I will discuss in detail in upcoming slide. And building back better policy is a definition. It's a defined term by the United Nations General Assembly, which means the restoration of a physical or a societal system after disaster to a certain stage that the system will not again face the same intensity disaster once it is resilient and sustainable. So in short, the building back better is a restoration of a societal system to face the upcoming disasters. So recovery means it's an immediate restoration of a disaster occurred community. And rehabilitation is a temporary measure. It's for the restoring of the basic facilities for the basic functioning of a society. So reconstruction is it's a temporary, long-term or mid-term restoration of a societal system, duly integrating the principles of the United Nations sustainability and resilience. So in short, recovery is an ad hoc in nature, rehabilitation is temporary restoration, and reconstruction is a permanent for the full functioning of the society. Next is resilience. So resilience is again a multi-dimensional word. It has a lot of definitions, but I am using here only the definition stated by the United Nations, which means to prepare a community to be resilient and to be able to reduce the disaster risk. There are certain criteria they have mentioned how a society can be, or a system or infrastructure can be resilient towards a disaster. So since disaster is in catastrophic in nature, proper disaster management policies are needed for addressing the disaster. So UN has developed certain policies how we can address the disaster and how we should, what we have to do, what we should not do when a disaster warning is issued. So from 1918 onwards, 1989 onwards, this United Nations started convening a General Assembly in every decade to review whatever the lesson learned on the past decade and what are the gaps identified and what are the future challenges to address. So Sendai framework is the latest one, which is the goal is set from 2015 to 2030. So this framework will be transferred to the other nations. So they will be incorporating this and making their own policies. They have 4 priorities. To address each priority, they have appointed different various institutions. So one among is the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. So their job is to understand, support the nations in implementing Sendai framework and to follow up and review whether the countries are following the same for the safer world. And for the guidance not on post-disaster discovery. So this is a United Nations Development Program, the another institution to support the nations in post-disaster recovery and recovery planning and rehabilitation. So how this work is, they have made some clusters in a part of the world, and whenever some country needs help in supporting them, like for example, they want support in reconstruction or rehabilitation or recovery or maybe economically. So this UNDP will go and support them. So the cluster, how it works is like if in case some sub-Saharan African country is facing some issue and they are reporting to them, so UNDP will directly go and work for them. So in case like Nepal or Bhutan, some issues are happening. So India will go and support them. So that is the way the clusters they have identified and set out. And in their guidance note, they have included all the best practices, whatever the lesson learned so far, to implement into the countries. So this will be transferred to all the countries. So they will be taking all the input from these frameworks and guidelines, and they're making their own disaster management plan. So we reached in Indian scenario. Before moving into the slide, we can look into some of the recent major disasters that we faced. So this is 2024 Assam flood. We can see how poor people are coming in a boat to save their lives. It's very and this is a recent snowstorm in Uttarakhand. And this is a 2024 landslide in Kerala, which washed away 2 villages completely. And this is a 2018 Kerala flood. And this is a 2024 tsunami, Chennai in Tamil Nadu. So when we talk about the disaster, we do have a separate definition for disaster. So our disaster management plan says disaster can be considered as any event can be considered as a disaster only if it is beyond the coping capacity of the community. So based on the Sendai framework, we have also developed national policy and national disaster management plan. So these are issued to various states for ensuring the same. And how much is Building Back Better policy is implemented in India. So United Nations has conducted various case studies to understand whether we are implementing it or not. And they have published in their website that some of the case studies, like in Odisha, followed by super cyclone, and Gujarat after earthquake, and this Tamil Nadu after tsunami, and rebuild initiative Kerala. But when we look into it, we understand how much there are still things are to be addressed, and what is the success rate of this Building Back Better policy in India. So in that, however, there are certain matters which need more attention than we expect. Geographical constraint is one among them. India is a vast country, and we are geographically separated, socially, culturally, everything is different. Similarly, the disaster is also different. In one place, if it is a flood, another place it is earthquake, and another place it is a snowstorm. So accordingly, our plan should be modified. It's like, so when it comes to as we know, similarly, some area is densely populated and some area is not that much populated. So these are the place an engineer can contribute more into our assignments. The planning, local planning, how we will extend the facilities, how we will make the people to spread across to the nation. So India as a nation, we have to take all the management principles like lack of inclusiveness. The community, in my opinion, community is not adequately getting participated in the reconstruction and rehabilitation process. But in this scenario, I want to explain more about the inclusiveness of engineering fraternity in the disaster management. So, like I said earlier, someone is not allowing engineering fraternity to participate, or engineering fraternity itself is not participating adequately. So we have a lot of open areas or gaps wherein we can contribute in a better way. One is like region wise, we can understand whether this area is good for the habitation and this area is not good for habitation, where this vertical development can be done, where it cannot be done, how to extend the facility so that the population will spread across. Instead of, if for instance, if some issues happening in a densely populated city, then whatever we are losing is comparatively more than what we are losing from outside of that densely populated area. So once the certain place is densely populated, then the using the federal status of the states, it has to be extended. It's not like working individually. It's like India as a country, there needs some region law planning. So this is a very important point in my opinion. So there are certain, we know earthquake is a disaster, flood is a disaster, or uh, what tsunami is a disaster. But what we what we are not noticing is that there are certain other instant which is also making which are also making the disaster in future. Maybe some issues what we are doing now, or something what we are doing now, that will become a disaster maybe after 10 or 15 or 20 years later. So that we are not getting recognized, and our young generation is also not aware of the thing. So for example, the seawater rise of seawater and associated reduction in shoreline. If we see the shoreline assessment report published by Government of India, we will understand how much shore we already lost to the sea. So similarly, extreme heat and cold, we are facing that every day. Deforestation, pollution to air, water, economic crisis, poverty, and slow disappearance of mangroves and island. So these are the things which are not getting unnoticed. But in my opinion, these are to be considered in every in every assignment of ours. So there are some certain challenges we face for this when we come into the disaster management. The main point is like a resistant to change. There are two types of resistant to change. There are if we are the government is telling some people like this is not a safe place for you to live, you have to relocate. People will resist. They don't do that, and when disaster happens, it will not be in control. Similarly, if we are requesting for a policy change, the government is reluctant. They cannot do. They have certain limits. Within only they can do whatever they want to change. So these policy constraints are, uh, in my opinion, is adding more impact on addressing the disaster. So it's not supporting for the reduction of natural disaster. Lack of inclusiveness. So, like I said, uh, engineering fraternity can contribute more into the assessing this population and land availability, where what we can do, how a design can be done, how a structure can be designed in a more resilient and sustainable way. A town, how can plan India, how can we focus on the disaster or resilient structures and legal in politically. What we are seeing now is like if one place is uh, ruled by one party and another place is ruled by other party, and they will be fighting, okay, you have to do. Instead of that, we have to consider we are one, and we should develop our country as one for everyone, for future generation. Ignoring the lessons learned is the other very important matters. We know the frequency of the disaster are now very less. So daily, like Bhaumik sir said, we are daily what we are seeing is disaster, nothing else, or some climate crisis. What this is happening there, this is happening there, nothing else we are listening nowadays. So we have to adopt all the best practices and lessons learned from the other disaster affected community, and we should try to implement instead of ignoring the things. Each and everyone should do that, because disaster is not a global thing. It can happen to a person, it can happen to a family, it can happen to a certain region or entire places. So anything can happen anytime. So for addressing everybody has to work on it. So reconstruction. Uh, for the we know there are it's a we are living in the world of digital technologies, and we have to see how much we are utilizing that into the addressing the disaster management. So certain areas like digital technologies like BIM or digital twin. So how much we are utilizing the facilities in the reconstruction or addressing the cost management or planning phase or understanding the whether this area is good for development or not good for development, and how much our young generation is educated of the need, and how they know that what is their contribution to the climate crisis, how they can help support the nation or India as a whole, what is their contribution, what public awareness we are doing. We can see there are a lot of framework opportunities, the stipend scholar with the stipend and scholarship given by the United Nations. So how much we are utilizing, how much we are participating in that programs, and how much we are in India we are going doing that thing. So these are the things we need a lot of attention. So a young generation should know that whatever deforestation or whatever they are doing today is maybe impacting maybe 10-15 years later it will come as a disaster, like what we are facing now. Whatever done earlier, that is coming as a disaster now. And implementing all the best practices whatever learned from the earlier disaster affected community, how we are taking the lessons learned and implementing, how we are utilizing all the United Nations framework and policies, are we implementing each and everything everywhere, and the role of engineering fraternity. How much is the engineering fraternity is contributing towards this, whether we are planning properly, whether we are suggesting the measures what we need from our basic knowledge, or are we doing more into it. And if when it comes to the disaster, we know that proper warning system is now being implemented, and recovery also digital technologies are helping. But how much beyond that, how much we are contributing to it? Every engineering department can contribute a lot in the addressing of a disaster. So disaster is not for any one or two people's issue, it's issue of the entire globe. So for that we need to address all the issues. Everybody has to contribute their own. So like any other project management principles, disaster is also having uh, impact on cost, time, quality, safety, etc. In addition to that, whatever I have presented in the slide and whatever I have not presented in slide is also needed to be addressed, and together we have to make a integrated principle for addressing the for a better and safer world. This is what I have to uh, my opinion. Uh, so here I came into a conclusion of my presentation. So I think at least I can throw some lights on the necessity of doing a disaster management for our day-to-day life activities like planning, designing, or implementing of a structure, and how necessity of a vertical development or relocation of some areas. And I do believe that young engineers or young professionals will get some more contribution towards the management disaster management stream. And I also believe that my presentation was not a disaster. Uh, so let me conclude with an my presentation with an anonymous quote. The resilience of the community is not just measured by how it recovers from a disaster, but how it prepares for it. Fellow engineers.
Very
Thank you,
well placed,
Ranjita.
very well said, Ranjita. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ranjita. And we have one questions from Muhammad Azamtullah. He is asked, how do we prioritize which infrastructure, hospital, road, bridge, which should be restored first? Hello, Ranjita, am I audible?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the necessary infrastructure to be restored first, like hospital and the clinics, that is, it's there in the policy. What are the things we should uh, restore first? And we have seen also from our experience, when an incident happen, immediately we need medical attention and basic supplies of food and essentials.
So we don't have any other questions right now.
Okay.
So I'll ask Alok Bhumik sir to just thank our participants and give its closing speech.
Thank you, Asim. I would expect few more questions, but let me give my remarks, and meanwhile, I would expect participants to also raise some questions, because that would reflect that they have they have really gone deep into the subject. First of all, I must thank Ranjita. Your lecture was not at all a disaster. On the contrary, it was an excellent presentation. You have covered the subject
Thank you.
very well. It is
Thank-
like giving a bird's eye view of what post disaster management is all about. You have very rightly questioned about the involvement of engineers, civil engineers, in the disaster, in the field of post disaster management and relief. I think a very important point, because most of the time we resort to military for during the disaster. Post disaster, let me just inform that there are three distinct operations. One is rescue, second is relief, and rehabilitation. And these three distinct operations takes place in sequence. Normally, you just see the case of Myanmar, or for that matter, any such disaster, man-made or natural. The first thing is to rescue the people who are victims, and that normally is done in a span of about 7 days. And thereafter, the next stage is basically providing relief, and that is where also the she has explained very nicely, how by through Sendai framework, the relief comes from various countries depending upon where the location of the disaster is, and also within the country itself, the relief comes from different states. We have this NDRF, National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA. Just yesterday, we had a seminar where I also presented a paper which was held in NIDM, National Institute of Disaster Management, and we discussed about all these things in detail. And the third is the rehabilitation. I mean, post relief, one has to assess the extent of damage. The damage can be structural, the damage can be social, damage can be environmental, and all these aspects have to be covered in the form of rehabilitation. I'm not just talking about the rehabilitation of structures, but rehabilitation of the people, rehabilitation of structures. So, any disaster has a very huge, deep impact. The impact is social, environmental, as well as financial, economic. And, people who are affected. I mean, it is one thing to listen about a disaster happening in Wayanad, but it is quite another thing to be a part of that. If you are a part of that disaster, then your experience, I mean, you always think that it happens with others, not with us. But when it happens with you, then you realize what is the impact and what is to be done. And I think that is one point what Ranjita has very, very nicely, in the form of few questions, she has raised certain issues which are very, very relevant, and I am very happy that she has covered the subject in entirety. Thank you, Ranjita, and I wish to also thank, do you have any more questions? Then I would think that
Yeah,
we can
sir. I
continue with
think,
the question.
yeah, there are few other
Yeah.
questions.
Okay, so my vote of thanks will come later. I think let us
Sure,
take few
sir.
questions.
So, sir, so one question is from there, how population has an impact on disaster management?
The population is always exposed to the disasters. So if there is a densely populated area and getting impacted of the disaster, and we know how much lives we are getting lost every day for the disaster, not only for the major disasters, but also for the all the climate crisis. Even when I was living in Delhi, I knew how we were getting impacted of the air pollution.
The question is from Sunil Kumar. We want to know how can we predict expected disasters?
That really, I am not sure we have
Yeah,
a,
it's a tough question.
dedicated authority to predict the disasters and give us the warning. So we just follow the warning, whether it is happening or not happening. Whatever the warning we are getting from the government, we should follow it. We should help them to for the relocation and everything.
Yeah, so let me come in here. You see, there are certain type of natural disasters where you don't get, the science is not yet sort of has been able to predict. For example, earthquake. Earthquake cannot be predicted in advance. The latest technology, you can only know about a imminent earthquake only about few seconds earlier, which is not sufficient. So you have to have a preventive measure in such kind of disasters. You have to have a resilient infrastructure to ensure that you can deal with such disasters. There are some kind of disasters where you can get some warnings. For example, flood. For example, tsunami. And I still remember way back, when there was a tsunami in Chennai. Those days, I think this was about 10 years ago. I don't remember the year,
2004.
2004. So those days, India did not have the early warning system, and people were not knowing what to do during the tsunami. And in fact, majority of the people were killed because they rushed towards the coast to see what is the impact of tsunami rather than going away from the coast. So today the scenario is different. Early warning systems have come, and you can. I mean, the people on the coast, they will be warned by the state government well in advance that there is a likelihood of tsunami, and you have to move to a safer place. Things are improving, but we have a long way to go. Similarly for floods. But certain things are also man-made. For example, Wayanad, or for example, in Uttarakhand, we have seen many disasters where it's not that the authorities are unaware of the way to mitigate, but the situation is that it many a times the impact of a flood or a cyclone or a landslide is much more because of the intrusion into the stream by the habitants, and I think the authorities have to take a good share of blame in that.
So there also there are a lot of studies happened about the Western Ghats, and they have decided whether which area is habitable and which area is not habitable. But we know we cannot.
Yeah, the commercial interests, sort of takes over, and there are a lot of things which happens which should not have happened.
Okay. Thanks, sir. One question is from other. What emerging trend in civil engineering can revolutionize disaster rehabilitation in the next decade?
Not only civil engineering, the entire engineering fraternity has to contribute for it. We need to further research on the what is the possible, like sir said, no, we still don't have any warning system for the earthquake in priority. But there are certain things we can predict also, like climate crisis. We know that it's in our hand. Not only civil engineering, entire engineering fraternity has to contribute, do some research, and understand what better we can contribute.
Very true, Ranjita. I would like to only add to what you mentioned is that as far as the civil engineering is concerned, what we have to do distinctly are two things. One is we have to build resilient infrastructure. Now, resilience is a term which Ranjita explained very nicely. Resilience is, it's a very broad term, generic term, which can be used for resilience of the city, resilience of the, mankind. But in terms of structure, when I'm talking about resilience, we should have structures which are robust, which a particular disaster should not lead to a complete delinking of a particular highway or a railway network. So we have to build structures which are resilient, which are capable of, restoring back very, very fast. I mean, she has told, she gave an example of military involvement. Very interesting. When you have a flood, for example, and you see that a particular railway bridge or a highway bridge gets washed away, immediately you see that the military is called there to restore that particular line. Why the military is called? Because they use a system called Bailey bridges. The Bailey bridges are used instead of the normal bridge to restore the traffic. Now, so therefore, what is needed is, you know, as she mentioned very clearly, that we should be, I think her last line was that we should be prepared for the disaster rather than do a relief of the post disaster. So as a preparation to the disaster, what is needed and which is very much lacking in our country is to, all the authorities. I think railway is a good example. Railways have, many of you may not be aware that they are prepared for any such disaster. Every 200-kilometer radius of any bridge, they will have a storage where there is a modular bridge ready, which is already loaded in the wagon, ready for dispatch. And this is available throughout the country with a radius of 200 kilometers. That means if there is any disaster at any latitude and longitude, what all they have to do, the authorities, is to find out which particular storage location will be mobilized, and where from the labor will come, and who will be the person to be deputed to bring that bridge to the location to restore. This is required for even other highway networks as well as, this is the kind of preparation needed to prevent or to mitigate the post-disaster impacts. I'm just giving one example.
Thanks, sir. A same question is here also related to this topic. Can we consider the disaster in the load during the design of the structure to eliminate the damage during the construction phase? I think, sir, you can explain this more briefly.
Yes. So presently, our codes and standards. You see, when these codes and standards were evolved, that was the basic premise of our existing codes and standards were evolved when the climate crisis was not recognized by the community. This climate crisis, it started, getting into our head, I think from 2015 onwards, after the Paris Agreement. And globally, we now realize the crisis. But our existing codes and standards needs to be upgraded to take into consideration this effect of climate crisis and this need for sustainable development. These two aspects. And globally, very recently, there has been there is a organization called FIB, that is the International Federation of on concrete, and the FIB came out with very recently a model code which is called Model Code 2020 for concrete, and that is the only code today which has a framework on sustainability and climate crisis built into the code. Therefore, there is a, in terms of the design of concrete structures, be it buildings, be it bridges, they have certain mechanism built in by which you come out with a sustainable, resilient infrastructure. Similar kind of framework has to be built into our Indian codes as well. And till such time, there are international codes which can be followed. But I think this is a crisis where we can't wait for 10 years to bring in changes. We have to do it fast. Whether the code exists in India or internationally, they are to be followed. They are to be followed as a good principle. So, if you are in a vulnerable area where you know that there is a likelihood you have to design the river bridges, for example, for a scour which is higher than normally what we do. We have to increase the durability of the bridges. We have to ensure that this cover which is likely to take place there, you you have to keep more margins because of the uncertainties of the prediction of floods. All these is to be factored in now in the designs, which we have not been doing.
Similarly, we can only decide whether the area can be developed or not developed. If the area is absolutely no need to, we have space.
Absolutely.
Our India is a big country. We have space.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. That's all the questions we have answered, and it's very good to have you here so you can explain all the things in brief and details. And please give your closing
Thank you,
remarks
Asim.
and-
So I think with this, we had a very excellent presentation by Ms. Ranjita, and I would request Ranjita to continue to sort of contribute and share your knowledge and wisdom with us in future also. Be an active member of Future Leader Forum. And I would also thank all the participants for their patient listening and request all to encourage our young leaders, Future Leader Forum, to bring in this kind of webinars more and more. And I thank Asim also to sort of spearhead this Future Leader Forum and bringing out this kind of very sort of knowledge enlightening webinars. Thank you all. And with this, I close this session.
Thank